fruit of the vine, which represented the Lord's blood. He said, "For as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes." That expression of proclaiming the Lord's death until he comes. What is it we're proclaiming? Not just his death, but there's much more involved in it than just his death. In his death, God demonstrated his great love for mankind. The Apostle Paul in Romans, the 5th chapter, in verse 8 said, "But God demonstrated his own love toward us, in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us." You just think about that for a moment. He didn't die for righteous people. He didn't die for people that were perfect, but he died for sinners. And whenever we partake of the Lord's Supper and proclaim his death, we are acknowledging that fact. But also, when we talk about proclaiming the Lord's death, we talk about Jesus as having been crowned with glory and honor. Hebrews, the 2nd chapter, in verse 9, the writer there says, "But we see Jesus, who was made a little lower than the angels, for the suffering of death, crowned with glory and honor, that he, by the grace of God, might taste death for everyone." But also, as we proclaim the Lord's death, we are proclaiming that we have a sympathetic high priest that we deal with. Again, the Hebrew writer in the 4th chapter says, "Seeing then that we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold fast our confession. For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but was in all points tempted as we are, yet without sin. Let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need." If you've ever talked to someone who acted like they really weren't interested in what you had to say, that's just the opposite of what, whenever we come to our Heavenly Father and to his Son, that he is interested in us and he sympathizes with us, knowing what we are going through while we're upon this earth. So when we partake of the Lord's Supper, we have a lot to think about. There's a lot of other verses that we could talk about in regard to this as we proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. But let's think about these things and partake in a way that the Lord would be pleased with this morning.